Okay, good morning. So we are now here to present the report about the how learning is facilitated. So how learner how learning is facilitated. So there are three elements at work in the classroom. Operational hierarchy in bridging teaching, learning and philosophy of education. So this is the organizational key of three elements. The first one is the approach. Approach is an axiomatic or philosophical. Approach is a set of belief systems of philosophy dealing with the nature of education or of the language, the learning, and teaching. The second one is the methods, the procedural. An overall plan of a systematic presentation of the concept based upon a selected approach. And the last one, the techniques or strategies. It is the implementation. Specific activities manifested in the classroom that are consistent with a method and therefore in an harmony with an approach. The lead approach currently used in the field is constructivism. Constructivism is basically a theory based on the observation and a scientific study about how people learn. It says that people construct their own understanding and knowledge of the world through experiencing things and reflecting on those experiences. In the classroom, we must encourage students to use active techniques of learning to explore the meaning of what they are doing in order to construct their own understanding, which is the exact opposite of the traditional approach of feeding understanding to the student, and the student simply swallow that are being fed to them. The comparing traditional teaching and constructivism. Okay, so constructivism, basic idea. So the student learn best by constructing new ideas based on comparison with current and previous knowledge. So learning now an active process. The student are automatically brings prior knowledge forwarded. Then the student share their experience with their group and learn from each other. We have also the instructor's benefits. In more group work allows instructors to see many aspects of students' personalities. The first one, the communication. The second one, the argumentation. And the last one is the problem-solving skills. So that are the instructors' benefits. We have positive aspects. So in constructivism, we have also a positive access. When people go out in the world, they interpret things they say and experience by comparing similarities and differences to ideas they already have. And the traditional teaching. In traditional teaching, we experience the following. In traditional teaching, instructor is a centered model. So, we can also call a one-way transfer of information. We encourage enumeration, memorization in traditional teaching. No room for thinking and understanding. There is only limited participation, and maybe there comes a lost attention, and especially we become boring. A recap on constructivism. Okay. In recap on constructivism, it is a teaching philosophy based on the concept that our learning is a result of mental construction. The student construct their own understanding by reflecting on their personal experiences and or by relating the new knowledge with that by already know. So that each students create her own schema or mental models to make sense of the world and accommodates the new knowledge of adjusting them. Okay, there are the following approaches that anchored on constructivism. The first one is the whole language. The whole language is a method of teaching children to read by recognizing word as whole pieces of language. So the proponent of the whole language philosophy believes that language should not be broken down into letters and combination of letters and decoded. So instead, they believe that language is a complete system of making meaning with words functioning in relation to each other in context. So there are uh, perspective in teaching of reading and language in whole language. The whole language is acquired holistically, whether first or second. The letters, sound, and words are not really language until they are not put together to form whole thoughts or ideas. So the four language components interplay: the, the grammar, the vocabulary, the phonics and spelling, and the context. The language modes or the Marcos scales, the reading, speaking, listening, and writing reinforce one another. So thus, they are not supposed to be taught sequentially but simultaneously. In the language learning, function comes before form. As one needs the language, he gradually gains control over the various forms. Okay, next, the multiple intelligences. The multiple intelligences is the theory advocated by Howard Gardner, which possessed that humans are endowed with various intelligences. So some are innately fully developed, others are minimally developed, but others can still be developed. This is advanced to point out to the teacher that teaching methodologies and techniques should cater to various intelligences. The next one is the schema theory. The schema theory, it is a schema that describes an organized pattern of true or behavior that organizes categories of information and the relationship among them. So it can be also be described as a mental structure of the preconceived ideas, a framework presentation some aspects of the world, or a system organizing and perceiving new information. Another one is the differentiated instruction. So, it is consists of effort of teachers to respond to the various among learners in the classroom. So, whatever a teacher reaches out to the individual or a small group to vary his or her teaching in order to create the learning experiences possible that a teacher is differentiating instruction. So, there are the differentiate of four elements based on the student readiness, interest, and learning profile. So the first one is the content. The content, what is the student needs to learn or how the student get well access to the information. Second one is the process. The process is an activities in which the student engage in order to make sense of or master the context. The third one is the products. The product is culminating projects that ask the student to rehearse, apply, and extend when he or she has learned in a unit. And the last one is the learning environment. Learning environment is the way the classroom works and fell together. Next one is the cooperative learning. So the cooperative learning is a teaching method where students of mixed level or ability arrange the group of rewards according to the group success. So rather than the success of an individual, learning. So cooperative learning is also structures that have been in and out of favor in American education since in early 1900s. So when they are introduced by the American education, that reformer John Dewey, cooperative learning is sometimes thought of simple as group work. But groups of a student working together might not be working collaboratively. So, there are elements of cooperative learning. The first one, the face-to-face interaction. Okay. In cooperative learning, researchers David and Roger Johnson have identified the 5 elements that define cooperative learning. The first one is the face-to-face interaction. So, in this element, the students are promoting each other learning through face-to-face activities where they discuss and explain assignment topics with each other. The second one is the positive independence. This kind of elements that the students are promoting each other learning through face-to-face activity. A student have sense the positive independence is the student have the sense that there is that they're in this together. So feeling that each member's or individual effort will not only help him, but the whole group. The grade of each student is dependent upon the effort of the other group. The next one is the individual accountability. Each student is accountable for their own contribution to the group. Clearly described, goals ensure that each student knows what she is responsible for and what the group is responsible for. The next one is the group processing. In group processing, the students are given a means of analyzing their group for how well the group has learned and whether or not collaborative skills are being used of these elements. So the last one is the collaborative skills. The collaborative skills. In these elements, the student learned not only the subject matter, but interpersonal skills are how to work in teams. How to work in teams. So students are taught skills in the communication, leadership, and conflict management during the early stages of cooperative learning session. The specific skills possessed by each member is made as the task that assigned as a contribution to the project. The differentiated instruction. The differentiated instruction consists of the efforts of teachers to respond of variance and among leaders in the classroom. Teachers can differentiate at least 4 classroom elements based on the student readiness, interest, and learning profile. The first one is the content. The student needs to learn on how the student get access to the information. The next one, the process. Activities in which the student engages in order to make sense of the master of the content. The next one, the products. Culminating project that asks the student to rehearse, apply, and extend what they already learned in a unit. And the last one, the learning environment. Learning environment, the way of classroom works and feels. So, the next one is the learning for specific purposes. The learning as the thrust of this approach is to lend focus on the refinement of teaching of English of a particular discipline. So the fundamental knowledge of the structure in general English has achieved first before the deeper and wider exposure to the specialized lexicon of the particular discipline is to be done for a more true comprehension and more efficient handling the type of text to the discipline. Okay. In reflective teaching and learning, this means that both the teacher and the student look closely at the do in the classroom. Think about why they do it and think about it. It is a process. It is a process of self-observation and self-evaluation, a self-correction and internalizing new insight gain and apply them in similar other situation and take it learning experiences. The discovery learning. The discovery learning is an active process of inquiry-based instruction that are encourage learner to build the prior knowledge through experience and to search for new information and relationship based on their interest. The next one is the modular approach. Modular approach is it is an approach to design the equipment, system, program, and the like. So in which independently prepared and self-contained units or modules are combined to form the final product. So this allows simultaneously developing and testing the various components and also help break down a large and a complex system into more manageable parts. So also called modular principle. So modular technique, modular design, building blocks of approach, and building block of design. The next one is the experiential learning. Experiential learning, it involves learning from experience. So the theory was proposed by psychologist David Cobb, who was influenced by the work of Dewey, Lewin, and Piaget. According to Cobb, this type of learning can be defined as the process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience. So the experimental learning theory, it differs from the cognitive and behavioral theories. In that cognitive theories emphasize the role and mental processes, while behavioral theories ignore the possible role of subjective experiences in the learning process. So the experiential theory proposed by Cobb and takes a more holistic approach and emphasize how experience, including the cognition, environmental factors, and the emotion influence in the learning process. The next one is the concept learning. So the concept learning is also known as category learning. Concept attainment and concept formation is largely based on the works of the cognitive psychologist the Jerome Bruner. So, Bruner, Goodnow, and Austin in 1967 defined concept attainment that the search for a listing of attributes that can be used to distinguish exemplar from non-exemplars of various categories. So, more simply put, concepts are the mental categories that help us classify objects, events, or ideas, building on the understanding that each object, events, or idea has a set common relevant features. So thus, the concept learning is a strategy which require a learner to the compare and contrast group of categories that contain concept relevant features with groups of categories that not contain concept relevant features. So next one is the inquiry-based learning. So the inquiry-based learning is also inquiry-based learning in British English. It starts by posing question, problem, or scenarios. So rather than simply presenting established facts or portraying a smooth path of knowledge. The process is often assisted by the facilitator. It inquires will identify and research issues and question to develop their knowledge or solution. The inquiry-based learning includes the problem-based learning and is generally used as small-scale investigation and project as well as a research. So the inquiry-based instruction is principally very closely related to the development and practice of thinking skills. So the process approach. So the process approach is the application of a system of processes within an organization, together with the identification and interaction of these processes and their management. So a process can be defined as a set of interrelated or interacting activities which transfer into output. So these activities requires allocation of resources such as people and materials. So the processes are managed as a system. So by creating and understanding a network of their processes and their interaction. So the consistent operation of this network is often referred to as a system approach. So to the management. So the performance of an organization can be improved through the use of process approach. Okay. So there are some techniques anchored in these approaches. The first one is the journal writing. So the journal writing is a keeping journal or diary is a great way to chronicle events in your life. You will record not only the things that are happening, but you also your thoughts about them. This allow you to sort of your feelings. So anyone has kept a journal with attest to the benefits. It helps you grow. That inner part of you is on a spiritual journey. And you need to spend time contemplating the lesson learned from daily living. And the second one is the role playing. The role playing is learning instructor that allows students to immediately apply content as they are put in the role of the decision maker who must make a decision regarding a policy, resource allocation, or some other outcome. So this technique is an excellent tool for engaging a student and allowing them to interact with their peers as they try to complete the task assigned to them in the specific role. So this work can be done in cooperative groups and or the student can maintain the personnel of their role throughout the class period. So there are different advantages of the role playing. The first one is student immediately apply content in a relevant real world context. Okay. So the second one, the student take a decision making persona that might let them diverse from the confine of their normal self-imposed limitation or the boundary. So the student can transcend and think beyond the confines of the classroom setting. Also, the student are the relevance of the context of handling real world situation. The instructor and the student receive immediate feedback with regards to student understanding of the content. Na another advantages is the student engage a higher order thinking and learn content a deeper way. And the last one advantages is the instructors can create useful scenarios when setting the parameters of the role play when real scenarios or context might not be readily available. Okay. So there are methods of popularly used. The first one is the lecture method Okay, the lecture method is an oral presentation of information by the instructor. So, the second one is the discussion method. So, the discussion method is a discussion involves two-way communication between the participants. The third one, the demonstration lesson. Okay, the bus group, brainstorming, the role plays, the cooperative learning, and group reporting. So that are the methods of popularly used. Okay, so that was the topic of how how learning is facilitated. That's all. Thank you for watching and listening.